Welcome to the Party Lines, where we look at the big issues, some political and some not so political, and address them from both sides of the aisle. Co-governance is being framed as reconciliation in BC, but critics say it raises serious constitutional questions. Take a look.
I have never seen anything like this. Over 6 terms of governments working for the provincial government, I have never seen this level of ineptitude and incompetence.
For more than 30 years, Geoffrey Moyce was legal counsel in the BC Attorney General's office, advising governments on Aboriginal law and treaty matters. He retired in 2022. Moyce says by adopting Dripa in 2019, essentially layering an untested UN framework over BC's existing laws, MLAs put the province in uncharted territory, in a country where First Nations rights are already enshrined in Section 35 of the Constitution.
There's nowhere else in the world that has done this to itself.
Moyce says his top concern isn't land use, but democracy. In his opinion, Premier Eby's changing stance on amending Dripa,
protecting against a very significant litigation risk for the province,
demonstrates the province is now co-governing with the First Nations Leadership Council.
Nobody votes for them except their communities. They have no obligation to the public interest for the other 5.7 million British Columbians.
Incompetence came up, the word incompetence in there, and I don't know how else to describe this. Aside from the fact that you said they're the only ones in the world doing this, and you're shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah, why do you think he even wanted to start this debate in the first place? Why hasn't any other premier or anyone else touched it?
That's what I can't figure out. What is the why behind it? You did it to yourself. You did. That's what always hurts. That's what keeps popping in my head. Mm-hmm. Why are you doing this to yourself? And the point of it is you're creating a co-governance model that a very small group that elect half of the model. So this isn't representative of anything when you talk about democracy and governance. How his advisors have advised him, but you've got his chief legal counsel that just retired less than 4 years ago saying, red flags, red flags, red flags. So what changed?
Do you think that's his movement towards truth and reconciliation? Did this come in that frame for him in some way?
In what way, though? You're giving away the keys to the house from the standpoint First Nation rights are already enshrined. They're already enshrined there. Right. So you're not doing anything that isn't already there. If you said, well, there wasn't anything there, you have to do something. And why you're doing it on a provincial level, I have no idea. But for months and months now, there's been mortgage renewal issues because of land claims, because of do I own my own property? Can I get a mortgage on my house? This is real situations they're creating on a daily level that isn't this is theoretical and we're going to kumbaya. This is actually affecting the everyday person in British Columbia from the standpoint of, I might not be able to live in my house because I don't know if I own the land anymore.
Do you think it's more political spin because the election's coming up there in that province, and so that he's just trying to make inroads maybe more towards the left and a base that will vote in favor of him instead of, the polling showing that could be a very slight margin, right, for the Conservatives there?
But land ownership doesn't affect the left or right. This isn't a left or right issue from the standpoint.
Right.
If I can't get my mortgage, but I vote to the left, I'll get my mortgage. That's not the way this works. There's a financial institutions looking at a risk matrix and saying, we don't know whether you're going to own your land at the end of the day, so we can't, and rightfully so, from a business perspective, we can't actually lend you the money because right now the land rates are ambiguous at best. So let's see what happens in the election from the standpoint of, are people going to say, well, that's great and I agree with truth and reconciliation, but at the same point, I'm going to have to go live with my parents again? How are you going to vote? So
you're saying it wouldn't help him in any way. So it doesn't.
Maybe it is. Maybe I'm just not seeing it. I don't. He just is tripling down, quadrupling down. So I don't understand the strategy. And it's not like you've got the other premier saying, yeah, that's a really good idea. Everyone else is going
not
whoa,
touching it.
Whoa, what are you doing here?
Right.
So I don't know. What do you think the end game is here?
Well, after the break, we're going to get into one of the world's largest powerful CEOs weighs in on taxes, and his take might not be what you expected.
Welcome back. When billionaires talk about taxation, people listen. But should they? Have a look at CEO of JP Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon's argument.
I don't know anyone, okay, and you guys in the room, might be Democrats, Republicans, who thinks the spending that sending another $1 trillion to Washington, D.C. will actually improve anything. So when you say raise taxes, if you said raise taxes and directly give it to the people who need it, I'd do it. No,
sir, we are running out of time.
It goes to all these interest groups, and they give it to their friends and all that, and which is why the people are considered a swamp. It's kind of a swamp. There's 17,000 lobbying groups, and bank companies are guilty too. They're just fighting for their one self-interest as opposed to what's good for my country. But that's what happens in Congress. And you see how these bills get spent. Like the CHIPS Act was a good idea until it had to be union, place-based, child care, diapers. What the hell are we doing? And we do it over and over, and then it fails, and then we spend more money.
I love the fact that he filibustered. She tried to end it, where he was not having it. Where Jamie Dimon just said, "No. Realistically, if you want, I'll help. I'll help the needy, but I'm not giving it to you. Just dilute it by 90% to help the needy." I believe what he's saying is valid. And you say, "Yeah, he's a billionaire. He's this and that." Well, he's a billionaire, but he's also paying a heck of a lot of taxes.
And is that economic lens without merit for someone that is in a hardship that they're looking at? Then they think that it's just like a cold delivery of just facts?
I don't know. I mean, he's a large employer. He's building in New York City right now. They employ everywhere. Like he's a huge employer from the back, Texas, Manhattan, you name it. He's got a say in this from the standpoint of the taxes that are collected from his corporation and personally from him. That he's saying, yeah, I would help out, but if you're asking me just to send more money to Washington, and the ironic part of it is his company does benefit from some of these policies that are set by the lobbyists and the policymakers, et cetera. So, there is also that side of it where he does make out better because of this as well. But he's got a point. We just always talk about increasing taxes, but there isn't any value for money. It's just, what does that look like? Where's that money going and why are we increasing taxes?
Well, the people that benefit, right, from those SNAP programs or different things, especially in the United States, I think would differ with his standpoint on taxation. Because if we're not taxing, especially the ultra rich and wealthy within, especially the United States, I would say, I think that's why something like this is completely tone deaf, because of the hardships that people are experiencing right now. And I think that's why it is newsworthy, because on the other side of the fence, right, people are saying, yes, we need to use that money in the best way possible to help people that are in need or don't have the finances. Yeah. But then when those programs are scrapped by the government, I think that's the problem, right?
Like he's not saying he wouldn't give the money. He's saying, I'll give you the money, but I'm not giving it to you people in Washington. I'll give it directly to SNAP people. I'll give it to the, if it ended up at the end user, he wouldn't have a problem with that. What he's saying is that it's the end user's diluted by 90%. Yeah.
Right, the misuse.
So he gives $100 or they give, and I say give, they're taxed at $100. 10 of it's going to the end user, or 90 is going to the political swamp, as he talked about in the middle of the lobbyists, the policy, all the hangers-on are leeching the money out of the system before. So I actually think he's siding with those folks who actually need the benefit the most. And he's criticizing the main core who's probably helped JP Morgan Chase along the way. He's going after that group saying, we never drained the swamp. If you want to go back to an old Trump thing saying drain the swamp, you could argue the swamp got bigger from the standpoint of that, it's not fixed and what's going on. There's stories now that we never heard about before. Not that it's saying it didn't happen before, like there's always been this swamp, but he's just coming out and saying, I'm more than willing to help. But just because you're going to raise taxes does not mean the output is going to go on the end user. I think that's where he's saying, if we want to increase taxes, let's make sure the impact is happening. I don't think it's tone deaf.
I think that's why it's always troubling that we need to have so many nonprofits and we have to have all these organizations to come in why isn't government able to have the structure in place to
Because government
support?
Doesn't run things well. You look at what Mondami's government grocery store that's going to cost $80 billion and going to be open in 3 years rather than 1. Government is there. Government should get out of the way, set the rules, focus on the rules. I mean, and government didn't create a homeless problem. Government didn't, well, I could argue in the States they created an opioid crisis, so maybe that's not. But in theory, we're not creating these issues. Policies do sometimes, but government should there be facilitate solutions, and whether that's, private sector can do it better, or because that's what their focus is. Sure, public-private partnerships, sure.
Which is great if someone of his caliber can put focus on that and bring that to the world stage, right? To say, like, let's put the money where it needs to be. So I completely agree. After the break, a long game, a global stage, and we'll look at China's strategy that many may be underestimating.
While the West reacts to Trump's every word, China remains mostly silent. Is that part of a larger strategy? Take a look.
Something puzzling is happening on the world stage. The United States has been infuriating much of the world by being reckless, erratic, and lawless, launching unilateral military actions, roiling the global economy, upending alliances, and treating long-held norms as inconveniences. And yet China, the world's rising superpower, has not piled on with thunderous denunciations and proclaimed itself the responsible alternative to an unreliable America. Understanding why will help us better grasp Beijing's long game. I spent the last week in China and was struck by how many people there felt differently about this latest American war in the Middle East compared to the last major one. During the Iraq War, Chinese strategists seemed almost gleeful at the spectacle of America mired in the desert. This time, officials, think tank scholars, and business leaders were mostly bewildered by America's chaotic policy, worried about it, and deeply uncertain about what Trump might do next.
It's interesting when strategists in China go, I don't know what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like they don't know what to do based on, where is he going next? And I'm not saying China, but what is he doing next? And they're puzzled from the standpoint of they thought the Iraq war was funny. That's great. Iran, they can't understand why. Iraq, they could understand at least why. Whether they agreed with it or not, they thought, oh, they're wasting their time over there. That's fine. Iran, it does affect them. The Strait of Hormuz does affect them. And they're kind of sitting back going, I don't know where this is going to go next. And isn't it kind of funny that China looks like they're becoming the more viable option of the superpower? And I thought,
right,
wow.
And trade talks are opening back up.
Unbelievable.
Right, with people wanting to work with them instead
Canada
of
did it.
right.
We said forget all the human rights things. We're gonna have trade. We're gonna talk about trade now, and that was months ago.
Yeah, what a pivotal moment in time that we're living in, because something like that we wouldn't have ever thought was possible. Like even a year and a half ago, it wouldn't have been that we would be going for allies like that instead of the United States. And that just shows you what a different world that we're now living in under this administration, and the ripple effect that it's happened to so many economies, what it's happening for the worldwide stage, what it's looking at with nuclear arms, and the safety that all these people are looking at their own sovereignty, and how do you fortify against such a large power like the United States. So when you see that the benefits are really going more towards Russia or other places other than to the United States and their citizens, and you've got China now on the world stage saying, like, what's going to happen next? It really is one of those things that the history books and like looking back after the fact, I think people will say, like, how did you allow this one man to do all this? Like, and knowing history, like, why are you letting it repeat itself?
Yeah, I find it interesting. I mean, following for Fareed Zakaria, when he does global news. That's what he does. He focuses on world, and the fact that he came out, and usually he's very polished on how straightforward it is. And he even came back in that clip and was like, he was amazed that the Chinese are going like, we don't know what's going on here, and we're worried about what's next. Mm-hmm. And he's looking at China going like, they're having rational discussions basically because there is no logical strategy. Maybe there is a strategy we don't know about, and it's brilliant.
Right.
It seems to be a lot of one-off decisions. And the fact that the Chinese are sitting back going, where is he going to go next? Because, I mean, they want a plan, right? They want to.
Everyone in the world wants a plan.
They do,
None
but China
can because of this, right?
Can step in differently than any other country, right?
Yeah. Whether it's aviation, with us not having enough fuel, oil prices, like it is happening and impacting everyone. And that's
China is getting impacted huge.
Right.
And they're mum on this. I mean, they're not involved in the talks to open the strait. They're just sitting back and going like, although it affects us, we're not doing anything publicly right now. And I want to see how long that lasts too, when they're finally fed up to say, no, this has gone on too long. Because I don't know when this is going to end.
Well, there's kind of two positions now the U.S. can kind of take, right? They double down and they continue on, and then we're in this long, drawn-out war again. Or he walks it back. He understands that, there's so much happening that there's nobody else that's going to come to his aid. Nobody else is saying that they want to come and fight this war.
What are you betting on?
Right?
Well, him walking it back is not...
No, and I get
if
that.
If he does, that's shocking. But
that's
him walking it back is not a... I've never seen it. Maybe he's growing up.
Yeah, well, I think that there's going to be enough pressure in the world and on the world stage like this that he's not going to have another option. There won't be.
We'll see. I don't think he cares.
Right. Abortion, conservatives, and a reoccurring political storyline. We're going to address this in the latest policy proposal when we return.
The abortion issue in Canada has resurfaced again in political coverage. So what's actually being proposed? Take a look.
There's a petition in Parliament right now calling for a national referendum on whether human life begins at conception. It's sponsored by a Conservative MP, and it's currently open for signatures. What most people don't see is that this isn't new. When you look back at the House of Commons petition portal over the last decade and a half, you see the same themes over and over again. Different wording, different angles, different years, but the same underlying push. Define the unborn as human from conception, introduce limits, expand conscience rights, or trigger a national vote. And it's not just petitions. Conservative MPs have stood in the House and argued for new abortion restrictions on the official record.
But the state had some interest in protecting the fetus and expected a new law to be created to fill the gap left by their decision on the 1988 Morgentaler case.
Others have tabled petition after petition calling for fetal personhood year after year.
The heartbeat of a human being starts when the baby is 5 weeks old.
It also recognizes that Canada has no abortion law.
No legal protections for the preborn. There is no protection for preborn human life in this country.
And or the infliction of harm on a preborn child.
The lack of protections for the preborn human.
And almost every one of these comes from the same place, Conservative members of Parliament. Other parties just aren't doing it. The pattern is overwhelmingly concentrated in one caucus. And the timing matters too. Every time abortion access is rolled back in the United States, the conversation spikes here. Not because our laws change, but because advocacy networks get energized. They point to the US as proof that change is possible. These petitions don't force the government to act, but they keep the issue alive. They create a paper trail, they signal, they mobilize, they build momentum. And that's why paying attention matters. Because once a debate like this is reopened, even just a little bit, it becomes easier for it to move further. Momentum builds in small steps. Petitions, statements, private members' bills, long before anything major happens. Recognizing that the pattern is there is important. Awareness is what stops quiet momentum from turning into something bigger. Calling this out now for what it is and voicing opposition clearly is how people make sure this push doesn't keep advancing unnoticed.
It keeps rising up, keeps coming back to the forefront, and I agree. It's as U.S. gains traction, it happens up here. As U.S. gains traction, it happens here. The one thing we do need to point out is we both know the MP that put the policy forward as well. He does do a show here. So this is also a local issue that we do know the gentleman put it forward. I would love to ask him why. I would love to actually ask him why and why now. I think it is some of the advocacy groups, as they said, like they get energized. I think that was the first thing that popped in my head. I thought, where's the momentum from? Because I don't hear it on the streets.
Right, and speaking, from a female and my perspective and the way that when these are approached for, fundamental rights and freedoms when it comes to our autonomy and our bodies, it is frustrating because in Canada, it should never come up. It shouldn't be a problem for us to have a choice, to be pro-choice. And it's just like organ donation or tissue donation. You're not forced as a Canadian to have to do that in the first place. And so I look at this in a similar light, in a similar way, that it's not something that should be forced upon you to have a choice in the matter.
Yeah, I just don't understand the timing on it from the standpoint. I think it is just maybe riding the U.S. side of it. As I said, I would love to ask MP Ellison why he thinks now is the time to do this.
Well, you do see a jump in their fundraising, right? Like anytime a bill like this is put forward, when they are looking at fundraising, there'll be emails and email blasts and fundraising.
Any government party,
spikes, so,
anything that tries to raise money. So you can use whatever you want. You're going to align with some of the party, not all of the party. It's the same side in every single one. There's NDP that have said the NDP's gone too left for me. And that's there's now liberals who are saying the liberals have gone too quickly back to the center. So, you're extracting money from that base that believes in it. Doesn't mean it's the core of your party. Who knows how much money they actually would have raised from this specific issue? I don't know. I just wonder from the timing aspect of the why now is why I'm looking at this from this perspective, and what's the win at the end of it, because the legislation's not going to.
And I feel like that happens a lot within the Conservative Party. They fall back to guns or abortion, right? When it comes to politics and whether or not they can ground in a certain issue. And so maybe that's what we're seeing here. Well, this week on the Party Lines, we unpacked so many hot topics right now in the news, and there doesn't seem to be any that are going to be going away. These are conversations that Jeff and I will continue to keep happening, and we hope that we bring some different perspectives to these topics and that you'll tune in with us next time on the Party Lines on the News Forum.